Recall expands to include 7 million pounds of deli
Nearly
meat.
150 sick in salmonella outbreak affecting 11
E. coli
countries.
outbreak in the U.S. kills 10 and sickens hundreds.
All these headlines about food safety. This isn't just policy, it's personal. Behind every recall, every outbreak, and every regulation, there's someone whose life was permanently changed or lost. I know that because I am one of them.
Welcome to Confessions of a Food Safety A-Hole. I'm Jeanette Zimmer.
And I'm Dr. Darin Detweiler, former submarine guy, longtime food safety advocate, author, and someone who's been speaking up for over 3.5 decades, even when it wasn't easy or popular.
This isn't your average food safety podcast. We're not talking about bacteria and best practices. We won't be teaching you the proper temperature to cook a chicken breast.
165.
Or even how to pronounce Listeria monocytogenes.
Not even close.
We're diving into the culture, the conflicts, and the human cost of getting it wrong.
We'll share stories, some painful, some funny, all true. Revealing the real experiences of someone who's spent a lifetime behind the scenes.
These aren't stories you read about in newspapers or magazines, and they're not found on conference agendas. What they are everyday experiences of people who have dedicated their lives to making sure you have access to safe food.
Because when it comes to protecting every plate, it's not just policy and data. It's personal. And it's time we start talking about it like it is.
Welcome back to Confessions of a Food Safety A-Hole. I suspect you missed us because we've been gone for quite a while. We did not intend to take a 6-week break. I think it was like a 6-week break, but we've just had a lot going on.
Yeah, best laid plans.
Yeah.
You just reminded me that we had planned to do an on the road, kind of like what we did with Selena's.
Yeah.
With our last road trip, which, by the way, was from Chicago, where we were at the National Restaurant Association event, and East Lansing, Michigan, where we were at a law school event.
Yeah, which I had literally never been. I'd never stepped foot in the state of Michigan before we drove over there, and it was beautiful. Really a beautiful state.
Yeah, in fact, so beautiful, we got so distracted.
Yeah, we forgot to record ourselves.
Here we had everything packed and charged and ready to go, tested and at the ready and, close to our hands. And we had snacks and drinks and our lapel mics. And we just completely ignored the lapel mics for recording that.
We just kind of followed the road and made our way to East Lansing.
But along the way, we stopped at some antique malls.
Yep.
And the Gerald Ford Presidential Museum.
Yeah. By the way, we did not know, but did you know that Gerald and Betty Ford are actually buried there?
Yeah, I didn't know
that.
Also, the last time I was in Michigan, I was driving and I thought I was going to hit the Presidential Library Museum. I just ended up going the wrong direction. Turns out Ford is the only president that has a library/museum that are two different locations.
Right.
So
and they're like on the opposite sides of the state.
Yeah, if I had kept going, I would have missed my flight. And so I did stop at the library at that time.
Yeah.
But it was like on a university campus kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And not as exciting as a museum. But this time, so now I've completed the ticket. I went to the library years ago, and now we hit the museum.
Yeah.
But,
and then on our drive after your second event, and we were driving, randomly picked some antique stores to stop off and wander because we like to do that kind of thing.
We got detoured due to some road construction.
Yeah. We got like major detours, so we really got to see a lot of the beautiful countryside because I wanted to kind of stay off the highways since we weren't in a rush. And we stumbled across something that you were excited about.
Chelsea, Michigan.
Yep.
It was a nice little main street and some shops. And I'm like, oh, look at that cute little shop kind of thing. And there was a train track up ahead.
Yeah.
And when the train passed and we finally, picked up some momentum again, all of a sudden off to the right was the Chelsea Mining Company. And it wasn't so much the words Chelsea Mining Company as it was their big logo, because you might not know of Chelsea Mining Company, but you definitely know
their big claim to fame product, which is the Jiffy cornbread mix.
Yeah,
the
little boxes that we've probably all eaten since we were kids.
You don't necessarily know where in the country sometimes.
Yeah, but it was kind of cool to
product
see,
comes
like,
from.
oh, look, there's a huge factory right there, still in existence, still operational. It was clearly still a lot going on there. So that was very cool.
And the logo on the big silos, and they have like, they took their box and turned it into like a what do they call it? Anthropomorphic figure kind of a deal. Like, hi, I'm the Jiffy Man.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. Then we hit Detroit to fly home.
Yeah.
And then we got home and realized, oops.
We forgot to record, but then we were just kind of like, oh, we're so tired. All right, enough excuses for that. But
I will say this, though. We
also-
came up with a really cool idea, and then someone else did that idea.
That's true. Actually, we came up with 2 cool ideas, and
Yeah.
somebody else did it before us. Somebody else beat us to both of those ideas. So.
I don't want to call them out, but gee, thanks, Matt and Francine. Stealing our ideas out from under us.
I know. I feel like Don't Eat Poop is on the cutting edge, and we're just kind of
A day late and a
trailing
podcast short.
Exactly. Alas, but also you had a lot going on. The big news of our life over this period of time was
Yeah, so as of the end of June, I retired from Northeastern University.
yeah.
They wanted the teaching line back, and they were not going to renew my contract, but I was eligible for early retirement, which means I get to keep my email.
Yay.
And I get to keep library access.
Which is awesome. I mean,
And
it's
I
nice to have
also-
those little perks.
Yeah, but there's also the discounted sporting event and parking ticket.
Totally useful to us living across the country. But,
Yeah.
what are you going to do?
Yeah. Was there
Anyway, so
anything
you
else?
retired and
I
something
finished
else.
off my last class.
Yeah. But the bigger thing, to me, the bigger thing was last February, we were in Boston because you did your TEDx.
Yeah, and you know what? I did know at the time that I was going to be leaving Northeastern, and I kind of thought of this TEDx talk as kind of like my last lecture.
Yeah.
And unlike in 2020 when I had the opportunity, but a pandemic hit us and there was no audience, and it was kind of a rush and last minute get tested and then go to this studio and in a black room all by yourself and just stare at the camera. And
I mean, even with me sitting kind of quote unquote in the audience, it kind of threw you off because you do really, really well feeding off of and speaking in front of the full audience and responding to and adapting to how they respond to what it is that you're talking about. So the fact that in 2020, it was just in this like super dark studio.
Yeah, it was dark upon dark.
Yeah.
And I have to admit that I guess one of the biggest things I learned is there's a difference between like body language and hand gestures for a live audience than there is for a camera. Because like you don't know, are they getting me from here up or are they zooming out or whatever? And plus again, so many changes and so many last minute decisions. And it was another one of those things where, it's like when you manifest wanting to do something, you need to kind of put a little bit more into it in terms of what do you really want out of it.
Yes.
Just doing it
yes.
is one thing, but having the experience that you want is another.
Right. And that first time, all you imagine that you wanted, I want to do a TEDx. Well, you did do a TEDx, but then you found out it wasn't actually the experience you were looking for.
Right. I mean, I'm still proud of what I did.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, the second time around this year, that truly was the experience. Not only having the experience of the past to guide how I prepared for it this time, but also that experience about doing that in front of a live audience.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a great group. The audience was phenomenal and it was a really cool experience. And then it took forever for it to come out onto the TED platform.
Well, we kind of learned why, though.
Yeah, and it's actually really, really cool.
Because it got chosen as an editor's pick.
Yeah, which
by
is a huge
the TEDx
deal.
Foundation.
Yeah, because they roll that out a little more intentionally to all of their subscribers than if you're just posted on the platform. It's awesome, but you do all of your own marketing for that if you want to get any kind of views. Whereas with the editor's pick, they actually did a they did a much bigger rollout for you, which was very cool. And
Well, to put things into perspective.
yeah.
So the video now has been out for 3 weeks. About 3 weeks.
About 3 weeks, yeah.
And it's almost at 15,000 views.
Yeah, which is really cool.
My first one that I did in 2020
Yeah.
only has 1,500 views.
Yeah. Huge difference.
Huge difference.
That editor's pick really, really served you well. It was very cool.
Yeah. So check it out. I'm sure we're going to, quote unquote, put a link in the description.
Yes, we will put a link in the description. But one of the reasons why I also wanted to bring it up, besides the fact that I'm super proud of you and it was a really, really cool thing,
Thank you.
was that a huge part of your speech was about the certainty gap. That moment between knowing that there's something wrong and making the decision to act upon it, that is a huge part of essentially your thesis of food safety and leadership. And I'm curious about not only you telling our listeners about the certainty gap from your perspective and why you chose that as the central theme of your TEDx talk, but on top of that, has anything changed in the months since you gave that speech last February to now we're in July, and you've been talking about it in front of a few audiences since then. And I don't know, what has changed for you with that?
I have definitely taken elements from the TEDx talk and used it in other onstage keynotes that I've delivered since then. And part of it is, I think it's a good message. Another part is that I had rehearsed it so much. You did so much work with me to really say, okay, too many words.
I was a bit of a taskmaster.
You were. No, can you say it faster? Okay, I don't understand that. Or that could be unclear to some people.
Well,
how are you getting to
also,
that?
the TED people have super, super strict rules about a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
Where the speeches that go up onto their platform. So it was very important for us to make sure that we were being as intentional with that as possible.
Plus, I was really trying to achieve the higher level of storytelling than I did before.
Yes.
I mean, if anything, I think I told 3 or 4 stories in this, but it was really one story, but you had to understand the journey of this kind of a deal. And how do you do that all in about 16 minutes? You don't waste your words. You don't waste your pregnant pauses.
Right.
You don't even waste your hand gestures. So all that work I did with you really just made it easy for me to say, I'm going to take this element and now I'm going to use this on this stage or on that stage. And
well, first, before you really go into your experience, tell people what the certainty gap even is. I know I gave kind of a brief overview, but tell them in your own words about that, because I think it's a really key, important point.
So when you look at it in terms of, there's that phrase, it was a split-second decision, right? And, what goes into that? And just because you have a split-second decision, people kind of make an amalgam of there was the decision. Well, there was also what gave you the trigger, the red flag, the indicator, the impulse that you needed to make a decision. And then after you made that decision, did you act upon that?
Right.
Right. We've all made decisions and not acted upon them. That literally is the definition of a New Year's resolution. And here's my resolution. I made this decision. Did you do anything about it? No.
Nah.
But so many of the cases that we've focused on over the years have revealed that the red flags were always there long before the headlines. And so why was it that there was the ability for a leader to know that an action needed to be taken, and then this very long period of time, the gap, if you will, where they were trying to become more certain, they were trying to gather more data, they were trying to find more information or more justification. What were they doing? And ignoring the fact that, okay, but people are now being put in harm's way,
Right.
because they're taking forever to do these things. I mean, we literally have, on one hand, you have Boar's Head that had plenty of USDA Food Safety Inspection Service reports of there being a problem, and yet they didn't act on them until there were the headlines. We had the Family Dollar stores, their central distribution center in central Arkansas, had multiple state level reports of there being a rodent infestation before the state level finally said they're so frustrated enough to get the FDA to come and take a look at this. And now all of a sudden they're going to act upon it. Again, information was there, delay, and there's consequences for those delays, because not deciding to act, not taking action is in itself a decision. You
Right.
decided not to act, and you need to understand the cost, the consequences of those actions. So that was really what was going on when I was putting this together. I will say this, I didn't start off talking about food. I don't want to spoil it, but just because this concept of the certainty gap, that space between when someone knows they need to do something and when they actually take that action, I talk about it in the food context, the food safety context, recalls, outbreaks. I start off by putting it in a completely different context
Right.
that takes the audience to a point where they're like, yeah, you can't delay in that situation
Right.
at all.
Because that situation is absolutely life and death.
Right. And if you can recognize that that situation is life and death, then why can't you recognize that within the food safety context, when you have the now we're going to act because those headlines, there's your proof in terms of it's also life and death.
Yeah, but when we're talking about that with leadership, there's the documentary that they just did on Lorne Michaels, right? And Lorne Michaels, he did this documentary about his journey with Saturday Night Live. And one of the most interesting points.
You stopped it
I
and
did.
said, Darin, we're going to rewatch this because you need to listen to this.
Yeah, because it was such an interesting point when he came back, because he ran Saturday Night Live for a few years.
5 years.
And then he left.
For about another 5 years.
And then he came back, and it was failing pretty bad. And Lorne Michaels is not the kind of person that is he strives for excellence. He strives to make sure that everybody on his staff, it's very clear from this documentary that striving for excellence has been a motivating factor of this man's life. But he's sitting in front of, he's talking to these executives who are like forcing them to just do Saturday Night Live as they're doing it, because they basically said to him, nowhere in your contract does it say that the show has to be funny. Nowhere in his contract. He just had to put on a show. And that, remember what I said?
Well, they also, it wasn't just like his take on it or whatever. They literally played the sound clip of the NBC executive saying, nowhere in the contract does it say it has to be funny.
Yeah. But we were talking about, that's why I paused it and brought it back, because to me, the huge parallel to, and one of the reasons why this certainty gap is always so huge between when they know there's a problem, when they act on the problem, And then the CEOs will just bail on these companies and they'll still get their golden parachute. They'll still get their bonuses at the end of the year because nowhere in their contract are they required to have food safe.
Yeah, I have to admit, I mean, there are some corporate mission statements that, the word or the phrase food safety is not in there.
No.
However, some people ask me, how are you able to persist and have the sustainability in what I do? I don't think I would continue to do what I'm doing if it wasn't for the fact that I know so many examples of not only companies, but specifically of people, of food industry leaders, that food safety is written into their mission statement, their personal goals, their what they manifest, everything they do. Food safety is like, to them, it's not food unless it's safe food.
Right.
But we do know that there are other companies that's not their key positive indicator. That's not their things. And even when you look at Chipotle, remember all those Chipotle outbreaks?
Yes.
And how the now former CEO of Chipotle, but he was the CEO at the time, he still got like his $15 million Christmas bonus that year. And you'd be like, how could a CEO of a company with all these outbreak after outbreak after outbreak, multi-state, all these problems, get his $15 million Christmas bonus? It's because
it wasn't a metric.
Food safety was not even part of how his performance was measured.
Yep.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Mind-blowing.
Especially if you're a food company, that just seems like it would be a given.
Oh, yeah, it's like being a CEO of an airline company, and you would think that, the number of takeoffs equals the number of landings should be a key positive indicator of your performance.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get it. Not every sports team can win, right? But it's how you play the game.
Right.
And same thing with food safety. Yeah, there's no way to 100% be immune from failures in food safety, but it's how you, quote unquote, play the game.
Right. And how you respond to the situations as they arise.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to the certainty gap, because that moment when they know that there's something wrong and there's calculations that are done to how long should we wait before it's going to cost more to deal with this outbreak than it is to not deal with this outbreak.
Right.
Which is why I personally think that insurance companies need to become more aggressive about having food safety as part of food company insurance, that if they're not taking steps and the measures that it needs to ensure that they are doing the best that they can for keeping people's food safe, they shouldn't insure them. Their rate should go up or, something.
I mean, if you're an alcoholic, you're a smoker, you have all these indicators, and believe me, they will find any possible indicator of you not being as healthy as you could be.
Yep.
Your rate's going to go up or your benefits are going to go down or whatever.
Yep.
But it is, I have to admit, it's very encouraging to hear all the conversations around the role of the insurance companies, because also back earlier this year, when I sat down with some other folks and the leadership at the USD and the FDA at two different meetings, they both independently brought up the role of insurance companies.
Right.
In really being a driving force in the proactive, in the readiness, in the, how companies are going about achieving these goals. That it can't be, if you will, the carrot and the stick, if both the carrot and the stick are held by the federal government. Right. There has to be other stakeholders involved, and they see the role of the insurance company.
Yeah.
But that conversation around other stakeholders, I think, is another interesting element of the conversation around the certainty gap, because so many media requests I've had of late have
allowed me to rethink the certainty gap in terms of how it applies to the consumer's home.
Okay, well,
As
tell me more about that because I'm not sure.
Well, the consumer at home, if we look back at some things that I've been saying, you cannot place all of the responsibility for food safety on the consumer at home or the consumer at the restaurant. You can't put all the responsibility for food safety on the consumer.
And that's interesting. I'm gonna sidestep your next point because
Okay.
remember that was a point of contention for you from way back when you said, about the housewives should already know, and that
Yeah,
was tell people about that.
This was about the USDA had declared that E. coli was an illegal adulterant in beef.
Right.
And there was a move to deal with the same thing in terms of salmonella in chicken.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, the judge did not agree with the USDA and said that you cannot do that, and that the women at home know enough to cook chicken properly to kill the bacteria. To
Once
kill the
again,
pathogen.
placing the onus on the
Right.
consumer and assuming that the consumer understands that this is the temperature it should be cooked
Right.
to. This is what would actually be the kill step, all of that stuff. And it's not like it's taught. I mean, first of all, we don't even have home economics type classes at all these days anywhere. So people aren't being taught that today, but even back then, was that a part of a home ec class? Like when
Yeah.
when these girls are taking their home economics classes, were they taught when they're taught to cook, well, you need to make sure that your chicken is at this temperature and your beef needs to be at this temperature? No. So putting the onus on them and not giving some responsibility or accountability elsewhere it's such a cop out, first off.
Well, there's also the amount of asterisks involved in things. Like,
Yeah.
for instance, except for when it comes to like breaded chicken and like a chicken cordon bleu, because there were people that were buying these frozen chicken items and thinking they were pre-cooked, and they were just kind of heating them up in the microwave a little bit, and they were still raw. They had no idea that there was more cook steps needed because they assumed it was like pre-cooked. And the definition of, it's not just raw chicken. There's ready to eat, commercially packaged. There's, so many different ways we're defining food. Even the questions around meals versus snacking today, and what Gen Z and Gen X and the millennials and how they're redefining meals today. And, what does a home cooked meal mean? If you ask one generation, you see a Norman Rockwellian Thanksgiving spread. You ask another generation, and it's Lunchables out of a plastic container kind of a deal,
Right.
And I'm not saying one is right or one is wrong, but the idea here is that a one size fits all does not necessarily apply to all foods and all
Right.
consumers. So you can't place all of the responsibility on the consumer, but at the same time, the responsibility needs to be shared across what we call the food safety's last mile, from the retail, from the restaurant to the home, right?
Right.
So one thing that's come about is California just enacted a rule regarding like the sell by, best by, freeze by dates.
Right. Which are super confusing, and none of us really know what each of those dates actually means. So what did they change it to?
Well, it's more clarity, especially, some of the dates are about how long it can be on the shelf. For instance, it may be an end date for a Halloween marketed cereal, and then they want to go into the Christmas branded cereal or candy. And those dates are weird because, like, at the time of this recording, we're just beyond 4th of July. And anything that was all 4th of July, America 250, Independence Day, USA.
Yeah.
Now that's going to be over in the discount aisle or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're going to put out things that are cereal boxes and candies and things like that are set up for the next big kind of relative
Which weirdly
holiday.
is Halloween, and I have actually seen some Halloween stuff
wow.
already coming out because we don't really have any big August or September holidays beyond maybe Labor Day, but Labor Day isn't one of those like heavily marketed events.
Well, and side note, for me, it's very important to see all those cereal boxes with like Captain Blueberry and Count Chocula and Frankenberry. If I don't see those boxes, I'm disturbed. But to me, it's funny, like, you know, all of a sudden, boom, it's Halloween, and then boom, it's Christmas, and then boom, it's Valentine's Day, and then boom, it's Easter, and
so those are like the sell by dates.
Those are like
those
sell
are
by
dates when they're
dates.
telling the grocery store, this is when you need to take it off of the shelves, which people confused thinking that actually has to do with some form of food safety when it's purely a marketing.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with safety or quality. If anything, if foods get thrown out unnecessarily early, right, now it becomes a sustainability and waste issue, right?
Huge waste.
But it is very confusing. Use by, sell by, freeze by, and there's even other dates that are different too. Like, you know, have you seen those packages of pre-shredded cheese?
Yes.
Right? In the very small print, it says use within 3 to 4 days after opening, even if it's not set to expire.
Right.
So you have dates upon dates kind of a thing. Okay, now, to me, use by, sell by dates, all those kind of things, any kind of dates on there, if you think about it in terms of food safety, that is one indicator, right? You still have smell and appearance, and is the packaging bloated, is, you know, all these different indicators. And it could be
and
that
taste.
the dates, and taste, right. It could be the date's fine, but there's other indicators of some problem, right?
Sure.
So it was simply to make it more understandable, to remove some of those sell-by dates that had nothing to do with food safety and food quality.
Right.
And so, of course, I'm getting some of these emails and calls from media folks to help kind of explain some of these things and to talk about, you know, what should consumers know and things like that. And what are some advice? So what are some pieces of advice that you would give folks? More like, again, try to prevent waste.
Yeah.
So talking with some of these media reporters asking questions about this, all of a sudden I found myself gravitating towards the idea of the certainty gap, because if anything, here's not focusing on industry leadership, but the idea of the consumer at home. When there's a lack of certainty, when there's unclarity about what these dates mean, it impacts that gap in terms of, do you do something proactive that's unnecessary, or do you do something that is don't pay attention to it, and now you're putting yourself or your family or your guests in harm's way, because it all comes back to that lack of clarity or the uncertainty around what do those dates mean.
Yeah. That I was, as you were saying all that, it reminded me, do you remember what my mother's quote unquote certainty gap is from the time that she puts food in the refrigerator to the time she throws it out?
No.
It's 3 days. So if something has been like made and put into the refrigerator, she never keeps it longer than 3 days, to which I remember the ultimate frustration when we moved back to California and we lived with my parents for like a month. And during that period of time, how much of our food got thrown away that was perfectly good because it surpassed her 3-day rule. And that was her certainty gap.
Okay, so that is completely opposite of some of these viral videos you see where the grandkids go and visit grandma and grandpa at home.
Oh my God, those videos are hilarious.
And they play a game.
Yes.
They play the game. And you know what the game is?
Who can find the oldest food?
And here's what's crazy. The winner will be like, oh my God. And we're talking current videos.
Yeah.
Oh my God. This dates back to this dates back to 1989 or whatever. It's
Yep.
like you've had a box of pasta in your pantry since 19, the
40
expiration
years.
date or whatever. Or this unopened. Well, there's been somewhere like there's an unopened jar of strawberry jelly.
Yes.
And it's black.
Oh yeah.
It's
Oh yeah.
so
Some
old.
of that food is just like
It's
I don't
buried
even
so
know.
deep in the pantry or stored in the garage. And it's like,
Yes.
yeah, I don't think we should eat that kind of a thing.
Yeah. Grandma, we're throwing it away.
Yeah. Oh, you've seen it where like there's this huge not grocery bags.
Bin.
Yeah, you've seen it where they got the trash cans and the trash bags and they're just going through. And it's what's weird is it's like on one hand, it's a funny game. On the other hand, it's like, oh my God, is it their vision? Is it a lack of knowledge? Why do they still have this food in the house that clearly expired 17 years ago or
Right.
whatever?
Right.
And who's eating this stuff? And I have to admit, there's even been times where we've been into some people's houses and, grab that can of this. And it's like,
yeah.
It's one thing if it expired a week ago
Yeah.
and it's a can of
But when it's expired like a
beans
year ago or 2 years ago or something like
more.
that.
It's like, it's a can of beans plus 7 years.
Yeah.
Who knows what's in there? Now, is it possible that it's fine? There's a possibility that it's fine.
Yeah.
But do I want to take that risk of consuming something that is so far beyond its expiration date? But here's the thing. It's kind of like gentle parenting. When gentle parenting is being, blamed for why, they'll go and arrest 400 teenagers on the 4th of July
Right.
for rioting at a beach or whatever. If we normalize, it's okay. It's only a couple years beyond its expiration date and, kind of thing. That becomes part of the problem because what message are you sending? It's not the adult. And we talked about the woman in the home, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What happens when the 14-year-old boy or girl goes, it's in the pantry, it must be fine.
Right. Right. So they pull something out and they don't look at the dates.
Yeah. If they can find the dates.
I know. That drives me crazy sometimes. You're looking at it just to find the dates. And I mean, first of all, they print those as small as they can possibly get away
It does
with.
seem like the
And
smallest
second
font.
of all, sometimes it's so like obscured. It's how do you even know what it's trying to say?
I do find comfort in knowing that there are people who, especially when they're living or, they're caring for their elderly parents or whatever, one of the first things they do is they will get a Sharpie and they will mark in large hand font, the expiration date in
Yeah.
a very clearly visible area. But they also keep the receipts. If there was something that goes wrong and they can see or whatever.
Right.
So they keep receipts for a while. But I think that's a pretty smart thing. Whether you're putting it in your pantry or you're putting it in your refrigerator, the idea of making sure when you buy it, I don't know why I'm using a gesture because we're recording the audio, but when you buy something and you just get it out of the grocery bag, to search for that date and now write it with a Sharpie on large font.
Right.
If you've got someone who either is going to be not of a mindset to look for those things, or maybe their vision is going, or their memory is slipping, kind of a deal. And I think that's a smart move. And again, I think that's one more step that even the consumer at home could take in terms of shortening up that certainty gap.
Yeah.
If that certainty gap is measured in how long is the shelf life of that item in your home.
Right. Right.
So interesting conversation angle, if you will. Whereas when I was talking about the certainty gap in the TEDx talk, it was about, industry leaders.
Right.
And now focusing on how even at home, there are things that kind of play a role in terms of shortening that gap in food safety's quote unquote last mile.
Yes. Yes. Well, very cool. Actually, I have something funny that's a total lead in that has nothing to do with food safety whatsoever. Sure. But it totally cracked me up when you picked up the phone. It reminded me of that. I was listening to the Ted Danson podcast where everybody knows your name, and he was interviewing Candace Bergen, who he's a very good friend with because his wife has worked with her on the book club, movies, etc. Anyway, but Candace told a story about how her father. This is a time during the height of radio. Her father is a ventriloquist.
Right.
On the radio. And he was like a really popular show. And there's like this whole conversation of Ted Danson going, so did people question it? Did they just trust him? And she's like, oh yeah, people just trusted that he was actually doing the ventriloquism with Charlie McCarthy, his puppet. and it's on the radio. Which I think, doing the podcast medium, you do have those moments where you're just kind of, you especially are somebody who gestures, and your gestures are not seen because we don't actually video record any of this show. But it just like cracked me up so much that people would trust that the ventriloquist is actually doing ventriloquism over the radio.
All right. I have to confess something.
What?
So one of the things I was doing for a long time, I wasn't just teaching. I did teach on ground, but for the last several years, I was teaching online. One of the things I would do is I would have, usually Thursday nights, a live virtual class, meaning over Zoom with my students.
Yes.
So I had posted something about the fact that this is my last class, this is my last week, this is my last day, whatever kind of a deal. And there were some students who kind of came out of some of my former students who, oh, it was so great to have you as a teacher, blah, blah, blah. And one of them was all like, I always found it amusing how animated you were. You clearly loved the live Zoom classes. When you get really excited about something and you'd be talking, sometimes you would do voices, but sometimes you would do like the robot hand gesture.
Yes, you do that while we're doing the podcast sometimes.
So wait a minute. Of all the things I do as a professor, what I'm being remembered for is my
robot hand
gestures, like danger, kind of a thing on the Zoom calls. Excellent. Excellent.
Yes. All right. I know we've totally digressed from the actual topic of the show. So,
well, we had a lot of weeks of thinking about doing this episode to bring into this.
That's true.
But
let's rein it in and talk about the future.
Sure.
Let's wrap up this episode talking about what do we have going on over the next several months?
Well, I'm going to be teaching about food safety and talking about food safety at a teacher, like a school lunch / teacher event in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Which I think is actually really kind of cool. It kind of brings you back to your roots.
It does. It does. Then we have IAFP in New Orleans.
So we're going to be going to New Orleans for a week at the end of July. So we're probably going to wait until after IAFP to record our next episode. So it won't be in our normal 3-week span. It'll probably be the week after we get back. So maybe the first week of August will be our next episode.
And I'm working on a storyteller project. The idea of talking with the people who are talking about food safety on podcasts and on stage and in books and columns, things like that. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah. Well, part of it's going to play out in October. I know we're jumping ahead, but we're going to follow. You're going to follow
Food
up with
Safety
that.
Consortium.
Yeah, and I get to be.
That's right. So, of all the things that we talk about, we don't kind of talk about some of the behind the scenes. And in this case, we started putting together this idea of having storytellers on a panel.
Yeah.
And then you brought up this incredible idea of you moderating this panel.
Right.
But also, we kind of wanted to do a little bit of, it's one thing to talk about storytelling, but let's make sure we're telling stories.
Yeah.
So we're going to call them fast talks or quick talks, something like that. And you're going to be doing one of those fast talks.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be doing my own. I've been attending Food Safety Consortium for a while and, just showing up and listening to the ones that are of interest to me. And they've always been super generous with me attending. So I thought, well, this time, why don't I kind of give back and put out a proposal to talk about the experience of the significant other of somebody who's in the food safety realm. So I have no idea what I'm actually going to say yet. I do have a couple of months to figure it out, but I'm kind of excited. I'll have 15 minutes on stage. So it'll be my own little TED talk.
Yes.
But I'll have 15 minutes on stage and I'll actually be speaking in front of all these people that I've met and spoken with on numerous occasions, but it'll be kind of cool to be able to talk about what my experience is and relating it to what their significant others' experiences may be as well.
I wonder how many times people who their job description, their job title, the quote unquote hat they wear is about food safety, and they're dealing with their significant others, their families, questions, concerns, observations, just the experience kind of a thing. We've talked about that a little bit in some of our earlier podcasts. It does become something where now you get asked these questions, or now you get, told not to say this or not to ruin that or whatever.
Right.
And you do kind of absorb this culture as seen by those who are on the peripheral or who are just absorbed into the culture.
Yes.
Kind of a thing. So I'm really excited to see how that's going to play out. I know there's a couple other things we have going on, but I think for me, what's exciting is that now I don't have that anchor of the university dominating what I'm doing in terms of the classroom, the teaching. It's allowing me to spend more time focusing on other things, but also the two of us now, we're doing more things outside of the usual and putting things on our calendar that don't always have the word food safety in them.
Yeah, which is very cool.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to Confessions of a Food Safety A-Hole. We hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, thank you so much to all of our new and returning listeners. As the great Ted Lasso says, we appreciate you. If you have any questions or wish to give us feedback directly, please feel free to email us at pepnexusinfo@gmail.com. PEPNEXUSINFO, pepnexusinfo@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Confessions of a Food Safety A-Hole is sponsored by Eagle Protect, the only glove company that third-party tests its gloves because, trust us, isn't a food safety strategy. Learn more at eagleprotect.com and safeguard what matters. Anything else you have to say, Darin?
Yeah, now I'm gonna have to go to the grocery store and look for Count Chocula and Blueberry and all the traditional Halloween themed cereal boxes.
Because Halloween is just around the corner. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.